Tethered Nation, you guys have heard me talk about the saddle setup, Tethered saddle setup, their Predator platform, for quite some time. This is the second full season that I've used it. I've killed out of it twice now, and really what it has helped me do, I figured instead of, I've given you guys specs, the weight, and how light it is, bulky free that it is, and so on and so forth, but I thought today I would give you a little bit of a testimonial. As, I will credit, and there's been a lot of people who've had a lot of influence on how I've started to hunt and how I've kind of evolved as a hunter, but I would say there's been no piece of equipment that's been more instrumental in me making that evolution than Tethered's saddle setups. The reason I say that is that, I'm a guy that works like a normal job like everybody else out there. And so when I go on hunting trips or I'm hunting, I have limited time to get stuff done. So I typically want to hunt more aggressively. And that's something I've challenged myself with the past, year and a half, is to just, to be more aggressive and don't lay back. And the saddle setup has really helped me do that because I've spent much more time with boots on the ground scouting than I ever have in years past. And that's really because I'm not carrying a bunch of bulky stuff into the timber with me. And so I don't mind. It's not a hindrance to carry my saddle setup. And that way, when I find fresh sign, I can get into the tree and I don't have to leave and come back and drop scent. If once I see it, I'm in the tree hunting it. I'm not finding it, setting up a stand, taking the time to do that, then leaving and coming back and hunting it the next day. I'm literally getting into the tree and hunting it at that moment. And I can't say that if I was using any other setup other than a saddle setup, specifically Tethered's gear, that I would be making the same strides I'm making now and becoming a more aggressive and a more mobile hunter. So if this is something that you're interested in, if you want to challenge yourself to be more mobile, more aggressive, and go find deer instead of letting the deer find you, then I would suggest that you go to tetherednation.com and check out all their saddle gear. I guarantee you, if you get into it, you won't be disappointed, and you'll probably become an addict like me. This podcast is brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. I'm actually having a little bit of Skull Brew coffee this morning while I record this. If you're not aware of what Skull Brew Coffee Company is, it's a business that my wife and I started. In order to give back more to conservation, we roast premium coffee, and it ships out within hours of roasting, guaranteeing that you will get the freshest coffee available. The kicker is that we donate 10% of our proceeds back to conservation. You choose where the donation goes at checkout. Check us out at skullbrewcoffee.com, and let's do some good together and help protect wild places one cup at a time. Visit skullbrewcoffee.com and pledge your support of conservation today. Welcome to the Truth from a Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 165. Today, I'm joined by my buddy, Greg Litzinger, a.k.a. the Bowhunting Fiend, and we're recapping our PA Public Land Scout, diversity of habitat, reading rubs, and much more. So stay tuned. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today, I am joined by my good buddy I spent the day with today, or the morning with. We had an early morning.
Oh, yeah.
We did. Yeah,
2-hour ride.
2-hour ride. That's right, man. That's true love, man. Whenever you're willing to drive 2 hours for your buddy and scout a piece of property that you probably aren't even going to hunt.
Yeah.
It's like that's when you know you're in a committed relationship.
Exactly.
And if you all you out there are probably familiar with that voice, the dulcet tones of my good buddy Greg Litzinger, the Bowhunting Fiend from New Jersey.
It's a face made for radio.
It's a face. Well, perfect. Yeah. I got pants on for radio today. Yeah. So
hey, if you don't podcast and Cookie Monster pants, do you even podcast?
Dude, I'm busting out all the stops for you, man. Yeah, it's like we scout together today. We hang out. I bring you to my home. I give you some good coffee.
Yes.
I put on the Cookie Monster pajama pants for you.
We almost had to carry your dog out of the woods.
Almost had to carry the dog out of the woods because he almost didn't make it. That's the only time I've ever seen that dude get wore out like that.
I wore out a dog today.
You did, yeah. That's impressive. I can't say that I've ever done that.
I have that effect on things.
Yeah.
He's like, I just give up on life. Please, just take me home.
Yeah, he was done, man. Yeah. He literally laid down in the woods at one point, just was like, yeah, I'm good, guys.
Well, he found bones, just not actual.
Not antlers. Yeah.
Dead bones. Yeah, he's all about it. There's a jawbone. Dad, here's a leg bone. This might be a femur.
Yeah, he brought his jawbone out of nowhere. I'm like, what's he have in his mouth?
Yeah.
It's like it drops a jawbone on the ground. So he was finding bone, but just of the wrong variety.
Yes.
But it was a cool day today. It was fun. So what Greg and I are going to talk about during this session is it's just some scouting that we did, just a little catch up. He and I have not had a chance to catch up on the podcast in a while. We saw each other, of course, at ATA. We're always texting and
Not ATA.
and bullshit.
Well,
no,
not the
ATA. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Harrisburg.
At Harrisburg.
I'm not on that level of ATA.
Hey, apparently, I'm not either. I didn't go this
I
year.
I don't get invites. People are like, oh, this guy's here.
We can't invite him. He's from New Jersey. Probably screw the place up. Put his feet on stuff.
Yeah. Hey, you gonna eat that?
Walk on the furniture.
Yeah.
But no, we ran into each other, of course, at the Harrisburg show at the Exodus booth. Got to hang out and talk a little bit. I'm at the booth working. I know you were there, kind of walking around, like running into folks you haven't seen in a while and stuff like that. So we only got to chat for a little bit.
Yeah,
and I don't think
you were too cool for school.
Definitely not that. Definitely never that. I was actually uncool.
He's studious with his glasses, looking all smart. And I'm like, hey, what's up? He's like, busy. Come back later.
Only reason I wear them is to look smart. It's like I'm just trying to fake people out, man. But no, today we had a chance to walk onto this piece of public. And I know that I'd mentioned in some previous podcasts that, this year I'm trying to find some different public to walk onto, some larger chunks, because some of the chunks that I'm hunting around here are of the smaller variety, maybe 300 acres. I mean, there's one where I got shot at this year that's like 60 acres. And so always love that.
Yes.
So trying to find some bigger pieces, and it just so happened, Greg and I were planning to get together this weekend to podcast. And so during the week, he hit me up and just said, hey, do you want to scout before we podcast? And I said, sure, send him a couple chunks that I was thinking about taking a look at. And we picked one, which actually kind of worked out because I think it was, it's not directly in between, but it's a little closer to you. So it wasn't like
2 hours.
It's 2 hours. Yeah. So yeah,
It's not
35
exactly
minutes
close.
for me. So.
Yeah.
we're
in the middle.
It was in the middle.
Yeah.
You got to love when you have a buddy say, hey, why don't we meet in the middle?
2 hours later, I'm like,
Yeah.
in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
Right, yeah. But no, we went to this chunk, and I think if memory serves, when I looked at it, I think it's right around 3,000 acres, maybe a little bit more. And I had scouted like half of it. I won't say half of it, but one general, I guess it would be the western side of this piece last year. Didn't really dig it, and you saw I kind of explained to you what that other side looked like, just like, big bouldery, really open, not a lot of bears, yes. Not a lot of whitetail sign over there.
Yes.
And then there was a different section of it that we wanted to look at. There was some water that was nearby. There was some food on it that was, state game lands that, that plants those food sources. And so we wanted to look at that just to see what was there.
Seen deer down there.
Saw deer down there. Yeah. Tons of deer tracks, deer shit everywhere.
Yes.
So we wanted to see at least what food was in the general area. And then we started making our way around this body of water, thinking that, there might be some decent sign around that, maybe hunt it early season or, at least get a sense of like, are there decent bucks possibly on this piece? And that was where we started, which was cool, man, because that's one thing, like hunting around water, even though I've been hunting like swampy areas for like the past 2 years, it's still something that I'm working on getting better at. People will be like, yeah, I see you go to Ohio and you get on these deer, or if I'm hunting back home or whatever. And it's funny because I get on more deer there, even though I spend less time than I do living around here, because, I've really only been swamp hunting for like the past 2 years, and I'm still trying to get my bearings about me, because it's not completely intuitive to me. Just, the places that you need to look and
waders.
And I need to get
waders.
Yeah, I need to get a set of waders. Yeah. So, I mean, that was the one thing, man. Let's talk about the one, because we found some rubs that were along that swamp. And I know, I know enough to know that whenever I get near water, I'm going to find that sign.
You need waders?
I'm going to need waders. That too. Yeah. But I'm probably going to find that sign, right, that's around there, because it's just, they're typically nasty areas where people don't want to go or don't want to get close to.
Exactly.
So deer like to be there. I know I said this to you, but it's like, there's one thing that sticks in my mind that Dan Enfalt told me like a while ago, which was, big bucks like wet feet, and it's not that they like water. They just like what water gives them, which is like another layer of cover.
Space.
Yeah, and space. And so we found probably one of the best rubs,
big one too.
Big rub in that area around that water. And you were pointing out that there was, a tree that was further out that would probably be, if we had waders.
If we have waders.
Yeah, that we could probably get out there, and there's probably high ground out there that's probably better, because there was a trail that was running right into the water.
Yep,
And so talk to me a little bit about that setup, man, like how you approach, like just that general, like, so we found that rub, like what would be your next step? Because I'm obviously going to have to go back and like validate some of what we had seen today, because we ran through a lot of property today pretty quick.
He doesn't trust me. That's why.
He did. I'm gonna go put up game cams to make sure Greg's not coming back to hunt it. But no, talk me through, man. Like, what would like your next steps be after today to kind of like validate just that water section?
Just that water section. It would be waders and hit those, trees that are out there. Those 3 or 4 trees.
And it was just a handful of them too.
Yeah. And they don't need much, and that. I mean, granted, we had a lot of rain, so that might be not as wet come the fall. Like knee highs might get you out there, but it's probably chest waders only. You know, they were out there pretty far.
Right.
So either come in by boat, get a canoe, paddle across that, or walk in the mountains with chest waders.
Right.
Either way, it's a lot more work than most humans are willing to do for a deer.
Right.
Especially that close, relatively close to the parking lot. Most people aren't going to just, I'm going to paddle in across this lake. The average bow hunter and gun hunter isn't going to put in that much effort.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because
or chest waders. It's a pretty good clip walking. Imagine walking that in chest waders. Yeah, I walk this in chest waders all the time, and it sucks.
Yeah,
it's the worst. Like, I'd rather not, but sometimes you have to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of funny because we were talking about it, like how close it actually was to the road in general, or not to the road, but to the parking. Like, there was an access, like a gravel road that you could use to get around, back to the one food source, and pretty easy to slip in around that lake. And we, full transparency, it's like we did have some human sign that was around, but it was all.
It's a real ladder stand, like a legit.
Someone carried a
extension ladder,
an extension ladder, like they were painting houses back there. That was camo painted. But hey, man, like, props to whoever carried that thing in there, man. They wanted to hunt and wanted to get into a tree, so good on you for doing whatever you got to do. But that guy obviously isn't going to hunt super mobile, right? So we know where he's at.
Yeah.
And it wasn't far off the gravel, and I think a lot of people will just overlook that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because it's a little harder to get into. And where we actually found the rub, I would imagine a lot of times is probably underwater, most times of the year.
Under heavy fall rain, that's probably really wet and really nasty. And I'm starting to see some of the sprouts, because we had some warm weather here, of all that leafy cabbage. So that's probably, all that stuff's almost, I wouldn't say underwater, but a lot of vegetation. That little cabbage stuff grows up 2 or 3 feet, and some of that high spot in there, that does or bucks could be bedding there, and you never see them.
Right.
They have no reason to get up. There's some acorns. There's some oak corns.
As you like to call them. Yeah. And it's interesting because that rub was pretty high, and that was the first. I mean, we saw as we were walking up along that edge, we were noticing that there were some rubs along there, and they were average at best rubs, right?
Nothing to get you excited,
right? But it was enough to tell us, like, hey, all right, there are some bucks that are spending some time
paralleling that water's edge, catching the thermals. Probably a lot of nighttime activity,
right?
But maybe not.
Right. And so we just started investigating a little further, and you were you like that word, big word, not really. For me, it is. Yeah.
You are wearing Cookie Monster pants.
So. I am wearing Cookie Monster pants. But as we were going, I think it was almost at the same time we were like, man, there's got to be a hammer rub around here somewhere, because it just felt like as we kept going and getting further, and
a couple of them blowdowns, those two big blowdowns right next to there. So I mean, they might be bedding up along that water, and that's just where he's just cruising, hanging out. Maybe he's staging up there during the rut, waiting for some does.
Or he could just be cruising back there, and I think you made the point, like, once we got to the back side of that body of water, there was an oak back there that was dropping a bunch of just nasty bullshit brush that was along the water's edge there, where it's like the perfect spot for him to kind of lay.
And some of that beach brush was there too, and in the fall, that beach brush is it's a wall of orange leaves. Yeah.
So all in all, that was a pretty good setup. Like, I think tell me if I'm crazy or not, but like, I think what I almost want to, well, that's obvious. I'm wearing Cookie Monster pajama pants. So, I think what I wouldn't mind doing this year when it just gets a little bit warmer out, maybe like the spring, maybe like when it's not 23 degrees when we walked outside this morning to scout, maybe this early spring before it really starts to green up is actually get in and paddle the edge
Yes.
of that whole thing, with a kayak or whatever, and just see if there's any places where I could use water access to get in it. Because that's the other thing too. It's like that particular area where we found that sign, there's really, I don't know, in my mind, there's probably only two really, really good ways to get into it, right? One would be to come from the other side, not where we parked, but from the other side.
Where you can't really come from.
Yes, that's just like it's a beast. Like if you're gonna do it, it's gonna be not nice. Or hike up above it and come down would be one way to do it.
That's really a lot of work and time.
Yeah,
crossing a lot of deer trails.
And like I can see why they would spend time there because it's gonna be really hard for anybody to get in there to actually hunt them. Or if I can paddle it and find like a low spot where I could just like set a canoe or a kayak and be able to walk through a little bit of water to get off the edge, just get into where the land is just dry enough to be able to set up,
I mean, I do it all the time. I mean, I did that in New York this year, paddled a canoe in pretty much right. I went 10 feet and I'm in my tree, crossed no deer trails, had deer, all around me, but I never crossed, I didn't see any buck worth shooting, but that access with water with a boat is, some areas it's necessary.
Right.
Because you can't get to that. If that buck's bedded there, if you've bed there all the time, you can't. He's going to know you're there if you come in by land.
Right.
Plain and simple. There's no other way. You're going to either cross the trail trying to set up on him in the morning, and in the evening forget about it. The jig is up even before you get close. He's either not going to move out of his bed till after dark, or you're going to blow him out setting up.
Right. Yeah. And so I think I want to explore that a little bit with a boat of some sort to see if there's somewhere where I can get in. There's one setup that you really liked that was actually right after that one blowdown.
Yep.
There was like a little open area. Right, basically, it was like the back corner before we started making the turn around the back side of it. And that was really where like the last bit of sign kind of left off. Was right there.
You could shoot, you're only 4 or 5 feet off the ground, but just enough to shoot in there.
Yep.
You've got decent cover, and especially in the fall, that'll be definitely a lot thicker than it is now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was pretty thick today even. So.
And you could water right to that thing. Chest waders go right to it. Either take the chest waders off or I just hunted them.
Yeah.
They're actually warm.
Yeah. So time of year for that, like you and I were talking about that a little bit where, I think the challenging part with some of this, especially when you're hunting public land, is that, there's a lot, like, so those fields that are around there, we made the observation as soon as we walked in, like those fields are predominantly planted for, some type of fowl hunting.
Yes.
Right. Like whether it's pheasant or woodcock or whatever it is that people are hunting. And that, I think, if I'm not mistaken, opens like mid-October-ish, if memory serves. Like,
I don't know.
For Pennsylvania. I'm judging that based on whenever I got run over on a couple different pieces with guys,
I got a picked bird shot out of my ass when I got home.
Pretty much. So I think, and tell me how you feel about this, but I feel like that's probably something to hunt that is either early season, season opening here around September 15th, 19th, whenever that date falls. I forget what it is for next year. Before anyone is able to get in, like booger it up for small game or duck or
it's
whatever.
It's possible. It's one of those spots you'd probably have to throw a sit, 1 or 2 in the early season end, September, October, November, and see what happens. The late season's probably not very good. They're going to just push them deer out up into that thicker cover that we found.
Yeah.
Later in the day, but I'm the king of throwing random sits at random spots and seeing nothing for weeks on end. So for me, it's another day in the park.
Right.
Oh, no more deer. I just hiked in, 2 hours for nothing.
Right.
I paddled in 2 hours for nothing.
I think based on the sign that we had seen, though, I feel like
you're going to see deer. I mean, I think
100%. I
don't know if you'll see him.
Right.
You might see him. But it's definitely worth throwing a sit or two at it.
Right. I think what will kind of determine when I would maybe try it will be once I'm able to get in and paddle it, check some of those islands out that have those singular trees or 2 trees that are like on a small island that's a little further off the off the bank or whatever, or off the edge of the dry land. And if I know if I can see that there's clearly like a buck bed that's there or whatever, that to me then is like, okay, cool, early season hunt.
Yeah.
Get in here early before.
And like I said, and that food's there. That was standing corn. That was what's planted. It looks like sorghum or something for the birds.
Right.
But I mean,
And then there was
corn,
another green. There was a green plot that was in there of some sort. It looked like it was
clover mixture.
Yeah, menagerie of stuff. There's a big word, menagerie. You like that? I'm throwing them all out, man. I put Cookie Monster pajamas on, dude, and it's just like the brain trust just comes rolling out.
Stay in kids' school.
Yeah.
Stay in kids' school.
Stay in kids' school. But I think I would try it early season if I can get that bit of intel from paddling it. I think the other thing I'll definitely do is because they're clearly working that edge, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think I would just probably throw a camera on it and just let it set, and then maybe go in like the first week of October because I could hunt like the beginning of September or the middle of September. Yeah. Let it soak through the summer and then go in and check it as they transition and see who's still sticking around. And if they're just cruising it to get somewhere or coming back from food, maybe headed up onto the mountain to that thick stuff, and they're just using that as like their way to get there for cover, as they're making their way up.
Yeah, or coming down from the mountains
in the evening. Yeah, exactly. And then I think that would tell me like, is this an early season opportunity? Because if it's not, I think it's definitely a rut opportunity. Yes. But at that point, and
there's too many rubs, different shapes and sizes to say it was just one oak tree or two oak trees down in that swamp dropping oaks.
Right.
The trail was too big. It's too much deer sign in general.
Yep.
And very just particular on that one trail. Just literally that trail is parallel in that lake.
I mean, there wasn't anything anywhere else.
No.
You know what I mean? It was like because we walked on our way back off the mountain.
We didn't see crap.
Yeah, we walked further to the west of that, and there was nothing.
Yeah.
So
seen some orange flagging tape. That was about it.
We did see some orange flagging tape. Yeah. So I think for me, it's like an early season play or rut. I think you're right. Like late season is definitely out of the question. I think for a multitude of reasons. I think one, people are going to push deer off. Right. 1, 2, there's squat for cover in there this time of year. You know what I mean? Because it's so barren. And 3, just my personal experience that I've had in swamp. Now it's been limited in swamps because I've only been hunting swamps for 2 years. But what I've found is like in those areas where they're water, like deer don't want to be wet and cooled any more than we do. Yeah. And so they're backing off that water, even though it does have great cover still. They don't really want to have anything to do with it right now.
With lakes, it's not like a big swamp, but there's islands or they can stay dry for a while. Like a lake, that's just a flooded low-lying lake. The lake's not really exactly deep.
Right.
You probably get the duck hunters or even just nature people.
Yeah.
It's probably like, as the leaves drop, more people are in the woods.
Yeah.
And
we had a couple guys today when we were walking out come working their dogs. Right. You know what I mean? There. So it's, it's obviously attracting people in that general area. So yeah, I think that particular piece is going to be early season. I'm hoping I can validate some stuff with a camera, get a camera in there. You
had them today.
I did. I carried them around all day. Yeah, 4 of them. Carried them in my backpack all day. Didn't hang a single one.
Your busted up hip flexor.
Yeah, man, it's screaming at me right now. But so that was the beginning of our hike in, and the cool thing about today is, and you and I've talked about this a little bit, is just like I've been wanting to change my approach to scouting a little bit, and today was kind of the first time I was able to do it because a lot of times in years past, it's like I would have taken one of those sections and I would have spent like the majority of the day in that section. And today, no, we did like 5.5 to 6 miles. It was the app that's on your phone. So it's like, it's give or take, right? It's usually not quite so accurate, but like 5.5 to 6 miles is probably
we'll
what
go
we did.
7.
We'll go
sounds
20.
Good.
20 sounds great.
Yeah. Chad would do 20.
Chad would do 20. Yeah, exactly. It wasn't easy walking by any stretch of the imagination. Like the easiest walking we had was actually at the beginning of it. And you and I looked at
the cart road.
Yeah, exactly. Once we got off that, which was like the first like 150 yards, we were screwed. There was really 2 other spots we wanted to check out, right? There was, I'd been on this piece, like I said before, the western side of it, in my opinion, was kind of like not great for whitetails, really open, bouldery, you can't really see where deer are moving, and it was pretty vacant assigned when I was in there last year. But the other side of it, when you get down close to like some private property lines, like there were some old clear cuts that were in there, and that was, I both kind of looked at that and was like, hey, we should check these clear cuts out and let's just make a big loop around the whole thing and check these out. And the first one we got into, like at first I think we were both kind of feeling like, I don't know, like this is really thick, you know, which is great, but it's like one, you can't hunt it. You know what I mean? Because it was just like, I mean, you're pulling trees apart to walk through them, like that kind of thick. So it's like deer aren't going to be able to move through that. And then we all of a sudden kind of hit a spot where you were like, hey, I got some rubs.
Yes.
And it's the weirdest thing. And this was kind of the theme for like the whole day on that mountain, particularly, is that we actually were getting swamps.
Yes.
At elevation on top of the mountain or the side of the mountain, which was like the strangest things. It was just like these really odd, like low-lying areas that were on like a certain elevation level of the mountain that flattened out just for a period of time that was creating like these like little runways. And some of them were like, I think what we recognized, one of them that we'll talk about later, was actually like an old logging road that someone graded out. So it was a low-lying area on the side of the mountain. But this particular area was just like, you saw one rub, then another rub, then another rub.
I've only run into that a few times in my life, that many rubs in a short amount of time on one trail. I mean, it was like every tree.
And there wasn't anywhere else they could walk.
No, yeah.
I mean, if you're an animal, deer, bear, like whatever, right, that's anything larger than the size of like a raccoon, right? Like this is literally the only place you can walk comfortably.
Yes.
Right? Like, sure, I mean, deer can slip through like the oddest of places, right? And like we get that.
Circle bushes run right through.
Yeah, like no problem.
Yeah.
But like as far as like if a deer is not pressured and they're going to walk and they're going to take the path of least resistance, right? I mean, this was it, and there was deer tracks everywhere.
There was just enough where you still had clear cut on each side of them. You know, the north and south end. So they were actually just inside the clear cut, where there was still 10 yards of clear cut before the hardwoods, and they were just protected. Yeah. You know, it was just unreal, the amount of rubs, and all shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
On different trees. So it's a multitude of bucks coming through there.
Yeah.
You know, it was 650, 700 foot elevation.
Yeah, it was right around 650, I think. Yeah.
450 yards, just tore up. Unreal.
And then it stopped. And then all of a sudden, like it stopped for like 50 yards, and we were like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden, like it vanished. Like it just like the deer just don't touch that one spot, and then all of a sudden it turned back on again.
Right where it got thick again. Where it kind of got opened up, there's just nothing there.
Yep.
Probably because nothing really to rub on.
Right. Yeah. So we found that spot, which was really cool. I mean, now getting into that is going to be, I mean, we talked about it a little bit. Like getting in the way we came in is like, I mean, you're going to blow every deer out in the county.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Trying to get in that way, which we walked in that way because that was how we were scouting the piece. The better way, and you pointed it out when you were looking at the map, was like actually to park on one of the roads adjacent to the private.
Yeah, it's a small little 20-yard section that goes up.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a hike, but that's pretty much the only way to get on that side of the mountain.
Or ask for walk-in access to one of the private pieces. We did find one stand.
Yes. On the private, right on private public borders that are most likely coming up from one of them houses.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I mean, that guy knew what he was doing. Like he didn't, I mean, it's funny because when you go out and you scout public, it's like you sometimes see stuff and you're like, you can tell like who
knowers and not knowers.
Right. You can tell someone who just like the two we saw down on the other end.
Yeah, the ladder stand side by side.
Yeah, that were
facing at each other,
so they could shoot at each other. Yeah. You can see those. I mean, I'm glad they're buying license and they're out in the woods and they're enjoying the outdoors. But you look at that and you're like, that's someone who probably doesn't know as much, and that's probably a gun hunter who's
open spots,
who's coming out like the first day and maybe the first Saturday. And cool. Good for them getting out. But we look at them and I'm like, okay, I'm not worrying about that guy. Yeah. Like I know where he's going to be. He's not moving. Those two aren't moving from that spot. No. They're probably just going to be there like the opening day or on a Saturday. Like don't have to worry about them. The other guy that we found down there on that path as we were finding all those rubs, he tried.
Yes.
Right. He had a good spot picked out because as soon as we saw that, we both were like, I would set up here.
Yes.
And then we looked, we're like, oh shit, there's a tree stand. Yeah. Now his setup was a little bunk because anything that's going to approach him from, I guess, what would have been the north, would pick him off at about 50 yards, and he would have zero shot.
Or not picked up. He couldn't make a move until that deer was like really
almost
close
right underneath of him. Yeah,
and then your window of opportunity disappears.
Yeah. Well, he was skyline once they get out about 50 yards. Now he had a ton of breakup beneath him.
Yes, he was a little too high. If he was about 4 foot lower, just so his head was at the top of that little oak patch there, he would have been good.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as he stood up, he's exposed.
Yeah.
Unless he's got fancy camo on.
Right.
The deer see right through him.
Right. Yeah. Can't even see him. He's not even there. He's got an invisibility cloak.
Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, I think we both feel pretty confident that that guy lives in one of the houses right down below there. Because otherwise, I mean, that was literally in the thick stuff we walked today. Yeah. The only bit of human sign that we found.
Yeah.
The entire day.
Well, there's a reason, because it sucked.
Because it sucked getting in and out. Yeah. And he has the easiest access in.
Coming directly.
Because when you looked where his stand was at, you could see there was a trail headed down toward the house. Yeah. Where it's
he had
like
150-yard walk to the house.
Yeah, exactly. So
don't knock on that guy's door, because he's going to tell you no.
Yeah, exactly. Or I should go walk and ask and let him tell me no, and then I know, which one is him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you're the guy.
I don't let anybody hunt my property. I hunt behind my house. Okay, this guy, that's it.
Yeah, right there. That's his tree stand right there. But yeah, I think the only move is to try to get some access from one of them down houses that are down there.
The cleanest.
Yeah.
You can definitely throw a sit on it, but you're going to have to cross a lot. It's going to be a lot of effort to get in there, which could be worth it.
Could be, yeah. I think that'll be another one of those places where I probably should have hung a trail camera today, but didn't.
Because you're probably not going to go back.
Yeah. Probably need to do that. I mean, if I'm going to go back, I need to go back soon because I don't want to be walking. That one, I would probably hang a cell camera in there because once I put one in there, it's like I'm not going back. You know what I mean? It's like,
why? What's wrong?
Until I find it, until I know there's a deer there that I want to kill. You know what I mean? Like that would be when I would go back. But that spot was a great setup. Again, I mean, I thought you made a really good point when we were walking through there. And it didn't even dawn on me until you said it, where you were like, with all those rubs, it made sense that it's like this is probably a rut spot.
Yes.
Right.
He's looking for does and those that are bedding in that little clear cut, going up and down. Whenever you have houses, somebody might have a bird feeder down there. They might be feeding them unintentionally, not necessarily baiting them, but people like to feed deer, wildlife. Yep. And those does go up and down, in those straight up and down mountains. And those bucks know that, and they just make giant loops. Anytime there's a bunch of trails going up and down, you always have.
It's just like whenever if you're hunting farmland, right? It's like you're hunting the rut in farmland. It's like, and you see a bunch of perpendicular trails going into a bean field or a cornfield or an alfalfa field
parallel
or whatever.
Trails.
Right, yeah. It's like you want to the trail that's running 30 to 50 yards into the timber off the field edge that's perpendicular paralleling the field, cutting a T across all those perpendicular trails of the field. That's the trail that the buck's going to.
And those bucks cut. They're just inside the mature hardwood, so they got cover, and they can run that all day long. And they can cut every trail going up and down. Any doe that might walk along there, either parallel with those rubs or go up and down, they're going to cut every doe trail. Mm-hmm. It's a very efficient way, for bucks to cover a lot of ground.
Yeah, and it could be, a 2-mile loop. It could be a 3-day loop, a 5-day loop, or whatever.
And most of those rubs were contrary because we came through in that same elevation. There's really nothing. Because it was real open hardwoods, and that stuff really deer couldn't walk through. Mm-hmm. And once it got a little more open, that's when we started seeing those rubs.
Right.
Away from the mature hardwoods and stuff that's actually walkable. Magically, all these rubs appeared.
Right.
And there's that whole why are they there? Why now? Why here? Et cetera, et cetera. Right. And just a guesstimation. It's a guess at best would probably be, late October. Yep. Around Halloween, probably first rubs start showing up. October 26th, 28th, somewhere around there.
Right.
Get the first bucks. Like I'm gonna get the,
Right.
At least back by me, I see that a lot. Like rubs will just show up in the same areas. October 25th,
and we saw that because there was
20th.
a ton of historical rubs that were around there too, which kind of lends
yearly
credence to what
rubs,
you're saying. Yeah. So it's like they're year after year after year hammering those same general areas.
Hamming it up, ham
and cheesing it. Because we weren't just finding fresh rubs. Because it'd be one thing if we just found fresh rubs, you'd kind of scratch your head and go like, all right, well, why here? Right? Like why in this spot? Right? Yeah. Okay. Maybe they're cruising for does or whatever. But if that's the case, you would expect to see what we saw, which was, all right, there was a bunch of fresh rubs that we found. But almost every tree you looked at had rubs on it from years past.
In every direction, too. I mean, they were rubbed all, 2, 3, 4 way. I guess you call them 4-way rubs, really, because they were rubbed all the way around. You're like, all right, which way is he headed,
Right, yeah. I mean, I think the nice thing about this, because I think when you find that kind of stuff in like a piece of timber somewhere, you're looking at it going like, all right, it's great I have a rub here, but I don't know what the hell it's telling me other
Yes.
than I can look at the height and see like
Yes.
how tall is this deer? You know, is it a more mature deer? Is it a younger deer or whatever? If it's all the way around, you're like, I have no clue what the hell he's doing. But in this case, it's like he can really only go two ways.
Yes.
Because of like how tight it is in there and how limited travel opportunity that he would
that
have.
is one of those spots, you know, and this piece in general, it's so diverse with terrain. It's a very tricky piece to hunt because, you know, the thick stuff had all the buck sign, you know.
And it wasn't even along the edge, which is crazy because I know when we were first talking, we were like, let's walk the edges of this and see if we can find good sign along the edge. Then maybe it would be a good place to set up. And there was nothing along the edge.
I mean, I bet you a lot of those does are bedding in that, you know, that clear cut or on the edge of it. Some, you know, just in mature hardwoods or right up near those houses or something, because that was just insane. You know, it really was.
Yeah, it was.
I'm glad I found it.
Yeah, I'm glad you did too. The other thing that you said, like, you know, that stuck with me while we were talking.
Light bulb.
Yeah, light bulb moment. Yeah, Cookie Monster Pants moment. Yeah. Is you had mentioned like, you know, it was more of a hypothesis. You know what I mean? And like I think we semi-proved it out, but you were like, I wonder if this same elevation all the way around this mountain is holding the same type of sign whenever it gets into like pockets like this. Because the point you made was like, if this is a rut highway, I wonder if this same elevation as it walks around, if bucks are just following this same elevation ring all the way around the mountain, and that's kind of like their loop to do all their like give or take, right? It's like it's not like they're gonna stay on that same exact like, you know,
625
latitude or whatever, you know what I mean? It's like they're gonna move wherever it's most convenient to move, but like within reason. And so we made our way through that, and then we hopped up over the mountain to the other side of it, and I mean, we probably weren't far off between 700 and 600 feet of elevation. Like elevation lines is probably where we were at. And we kind of jumped into a similar type of thing. Only this one started off as like a logging road. Like we started finding some rubs, like just random ones that were in the thick stuff. Then all of a sudden we hit this there was a freaking swamp that was up top. It had like reeds in it, the whole
and
nine.
stickers.
You got into some stuff.
Yes. Sharp stickers. And I didn't have double duck. I had just single duck pants. So.
Yeah, I was rolling double duck today. Double duck, not to be mistaken with double dutch. We weren't jumping rope, you know. But that was cool because it was pretty similar to what we had seen on the other side, which was rad because you could hunt that. There's multiple setups in that scenario, right? And like the point that you kind of kept making the entire time we were scouting was just like you were like, there's so much diversity on this one piece, and we were only on a part of it.
Yes,
right. It's like we didn't cover the whole 3,400 acres that
it is full of boulders.
Yeah, well, it's all full of boulders, so it wasn't worth looking at. But you know, even within the pieces that we scouted, there was so much diversity that there was so many different setups that you could hunt. There, you know, you weren't pinned down.
You could hunt that one clear cut all season long, every Saturday, and have a different setup for every Saturday. Yeah, and not hunt the same tree or same area. Yeah, because there's so many different openings and pockets and sign. You know, sign was here, sign was there. So it's a tricky piece to hunt because it's the only place we had consistent sign like direction travel was that first rub
section,
line. Yeah, everything else was just scattered all through there. Like rub lines this way, all right, and then 10 yards away you had another rub line going complete opposite direction, going up and around, and you're like, oh, all right, well that's not helping me out here, and the scrapes and more scrapes and rubs and
that first one that we found, like the first one we were just talking about, let's call that the eastern side of the mountain, right? Is like that one, even though we found that dude's stand there, like I would not be afraid to hunt it up or down from where he was at. Yes. Right. You don't know how often he's hunting it. I don't think, put it this way, he's going to be the only person that applies any pressure to those deer in that particular area.
And
you know what I mean?
With the north wind, he's not technically crossing too many trails, and those deer probably, he's coming from houses, they're used to his scent. Like my backyard, I can cut my grass, and those deer they're not really bothered. They'll still come out. Right. 20 minutes after I cut my grass and cut through my yard. Right. Because it's
they
normal.
Don't associate it with danger, and like
exactly.
It's not like he's up there, winging bullets at like every single deer.
We didn't have those. No, he didn't. There was no scent canisters. There was no trash near your stand. Like
he was clean.
Yep.
Yeah, and you can see how he's getting in and out.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so it's like he's got one way in and one way out. So it's not going to bother me any. It's like if I would just set up for a north wind, I'd set up to the north of him.
Yep.
You know what I mean? For a south wind, I'd set up to the south of him if I was going to hunt that side.
Yep.
The trickiest part about all that is, or any of it actually that we looked at today, other than down by that lake. Well, even the lake was just access. Is how you getting in and how you getting out.
That's crucial on these pieces, and that's where these clear cuts. There's so much food.
Oh,
they don't even need to come out at clear cut to feed it on the acorns.
Yep.
Because first of all, there's a lot of oaks still in that clear cut, way more than I've usually seen clear cuts of that size or that age. There's a lot of mature acorns.
Yep.
Well,
that one tree that we found was just like
getting it was all capped off. Droppings all over the place.
Yep.
Right above where those rubs were.
Yep.
It wasn't that far from those rubs.
Yep. And that for me, if I were going to hunt that in like earlier October, that would be the spot that I would go to. Would be where I would have some potential food, a really good destination.
You'd have to get in there
source.
on a rainy day and check for some of those trees, see if they're holding any acorns,
oakhorns. Yeah. But over on the other side, so we made our way through that and kind of got to the end of it, and I mean we were both pretty stoked. I was really stoked because I had.
Because you're with me, I know.
Because I was hanging out with you for one, and I always look forward to that. But I didn't really know because I had been on this piece before. I didn't really know what to expect. I was excited about the stuff we found around the lake because I was like, okay, cool. I was
There's
like,
at least one good buck here,
right? Yeah, I'm like, I can get in here and hunt. Early season. Have another place to go for early season. Add it to like the places that I might be able to check out. Right, put some cameras and validate what's going on. To be honest, like I wasn't really sure what we were going to get it to, what we got on top. And if I'm being real honest, when we first started walking in, seeing how thick it was, like with just like high stem count, stuff like that, I was kind of like, I've played this game and seen this before where I spent like half a day walking through stuff like this to only find out that there was not a single place to hunt, like on the entire thing. Right. And then it opened up into these little pockets. And that was like the coolest part, I think, about the whole day was that it's one of those areas aside from the lake that if you've not walked through there, you don't know they're there.
Yeah.
You know
have
what I
to
mean?
cut through it, which is there's nothing on the perimeter that says, hey, there's a logging road going through here.
There's not even a defined deer trail walking into it that says like, hey, deer are walking into this.
You got to go through the briars to get in there.
Yep. And it was just, and I want to say, I mean, partially what we found was, somewhat dumb luck because we were just going to walk through it until we found something that we liked. You know what I mean? And that's really what it just took. And I think that's what we
sometimes on the ground,
Yeah, that's what we preach a lot of times is like, look, it's effort. You know what I mean? It's going in and looking and just seeing what's there. You can only tell so much from aerial, right? And you can only tell so much by walking the edge.
And that aerial, that could be what we have on Onyx or Google could be 4 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't really know.
And it took us just saying, hey, you were like, I'm going to dive into this spot. I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to dive in up over here. And we just started walking. You were like, hey, I got some rubs. So it's like, okay, well, let's move over and let's start looking in this general area where you found a rub. Yeah. And then we kind of, when I say we split up, it's like, wasn't like we were like half mile away from each other. Yeah. We were like 10 to 20 yards away from each other, just kind of walking through. And then I came across that logging road and I was like, hey, here's this logging road. So then it made sense that like, well, then let's parallel this thing out.
Yes.
And I'll walk the logging road. You bird dogged it and got into all the briars.
Yeah, that I couldn't get out of.
That you couldn't get out of. And we walked through that. And look, going the original direction, I think we were headed south at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it wasn't as great. I think the best rub we found on that run
was that right at the end.
Was right at the end there, which wasn't surprising. And looking back on it now, I'd probably classify that as probably like nocturnal activity, only because maybe another 75 yards was when you popped out into that like little area that had those super young oak trees or whatever they had planted in that one little like what probably was like a log yard landing area at one point in time, which means I don't know. We saw zero human sign on that trail, so it's like I wouldn't be afraid to get in there and hunt. But if I were going to hunt that general area, when we walked back through, we found a prime spot that actually had a scrape and all that side cover in a 7-way rub. That was like a great rub. You know what I mean? It was rubbed from every which way. in for this area, like a big rub.
Yes.
And that to me, I was like Yahtzee.
Yeah.
I was like, that's because I know you're a big rub guy.
I'll say bingo. He says Yahtzee.
Right. Yeah. Well, you say bingo, I say Yahtzee. I know you're a big rub guy.
Yes.
Right. I'm a bigger scrape guy than I am a rub guy. But that kind of had like the best of both worlds.
And you had a bunch of saplings that were raw, ripped to shreds. Yes. Bushes that were destroyed. So a deer of size went through there a few times because the sign was definitely at different age.
Yeah.
That bush was early season.
Yep.
Probably him maybe in September. Getting late September and separating himself from the herd, so to speak. Because that bush was old, destroyed.
Yeah.
And then those rubs were definitely fresher.
Yeah.
So the time stamping of the buck sign is not definitely just rut only.
Right.
Late October. It was. You might be living in that clear cut because
right.
You ain't going in there, especially in the fall. In October,
we found a deadhead in there.
Yeah. And if anybody walks that road, that logging road, they would have seen that deadhead, 100 times over because it was right there. Yep.
Exactly. That there was zero. I mean, there was an old wooden stand that you found. I mean, that thing had probably been there prior to them even cutting it.
Yeah, that thing was probably 30 years old.
Yeah, so it wasn't anything. Oh, it looks like the wife's home because the dog let us know that somebody.
He's finally awake.
Yeah, he's finally awake. We run him into the dirt today, but look, he's walking a little gingerly. He might be a little sore.
How's your feet?
Yeah, but yeah, I mean that piece was prime, and that's a spot that I'm really interested in going and checking out. Hey, it's enough. Stop growling. That's a piece I'm definitely interested in going back and checking out. And if I were to be honest, that's probably the part that I'm most excited about going back and hunting, because I almost feel like to me that would be a mid to later October starting time, right? Because I don't know if that buck's living in there. I don't know where it's bedded,
exactly.
Right? So I'm really reluctant to walk in there,
like surprise,
willy nilly, right? And just on a whim, And look, I'll go back in there and I'll hang a camera or two, cell camera, and see if I can monitor it. And maybe I pick him up, and maybe he is on like some type of early season pattern that we did get close enough to his bed to where it's like maybe I can get an opportunity.
And this, what's great about that, where we had all that rub and scrape there, that 7-way rub and that scrape is. There's actually observations. You can come up in that small little strip and actually sit in mature hardwoods and look at that clear cut from a distance, and it's like, all right, some does are coming out of here, got some buck signs showing up here, and you can monitor from a distance.
Yeah.
So you can actually still get good intel, actually really good intel. It's not like an observation stand where you're using a binos from a mile away.
Right.
You could actually, possibly see the target buck, or see what deer are doing or what they're not doing.
Right. Yeah. So I think I'll definitely be headed back in there and hang a camera over that scrape. Like that'll definitely be a spot that I prioritize, because I think if nothing else, I could get in there the later part of October, and whenever they start laying down some signs, some rubs, some scrapes, when they start getting territorial, not just shedding velvet or whatever. I think I would go in and throw a hunt at that, because I think that would be a really good setup.
Yeah, it's the possibilities are endless with that piece. They really are, because that clear cut didn't seem that big until you were actually in there, and then it's like, holy, this is a lot bigger than it looks on the map. It's like, wow, we went 10 yards, and I'm like,
and I feel like it would hunt big too, even though you're only able to hunt like vertical strips of it where you have access. But again, like that's part of what I love about it, is that it's going to be hard to get into. Yes, access is going to be a challenge with that whole piece, like no doubt. I think that spot with the scrape, with that crazy, what we like to call the 7-way rub, is I think that might be actually one of the easier pieces, just from a logistics, being quiet, getting into it. I think that'll be an easier one to get into, because it wasn't far off the edge of the clear cut.
That's what I say. There's observations that you can sit on the edge. You're 20 yards off that clear cut. You're still in mature hardwoods. You can actually still get a shot on a buck that time of year, November.
Yeah.
I know you're a big road guy, but you're not really hunting too much rut around here. But
right.
It's definitely something if you're here.
Well, I think this year I might be, man, because going back to Ohio with Chad this year, and actually, as people are listening to this on Wednesday and Thursday, I'll be driving to Ohio to meet up with Chad and Josh Profit and another fella to do
See
a little
who can walk
scouting.
the most.
See who can, see who,
Talk tracks
see
all
if
the time they're
Josh
doing
and Chad kill each other on this trip. See who can run the other end of the ground. But I think I'm gonna go a little later than I've gone in years past, because I feel like this particular piece, the last time I was there with Chad, we both, well, one, we didn't realize there was an EHD issue. Like before we got there, we found out from some locals that was the case. But we both kind of felt like we might have been there like a week too early, and that was like the first week in November. So I think this year I'm probably going to head down in October, like for long weekends, like once or twice. But I think this year I'm going to go like the second week of October, getting close to that like Thanksgiving time frame, like 10 days on
Second
that.
week in November.
What's that? Second week in November. What did I say? October? Oh, sorry. Yeah, second week of
Clarify for
yeah,
them.
sorry. Second week of November for like 10 days or whatever, versus earlier in November, which will give me an opportunity to actually hunt some rut.
Just make
around
sure you
here.
don't miss the same deer 7 times this year.
What? Okay, let's not talk about that.
Yeah.
I talked about that enough in this podcast. So I may actually, point being is I may actually get some rut time in around
here.
here.
Yeah, and scraping, that's that first couple, last days of October and the first couple of days of November. That's probably when that thing is getting, hammered.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. So before we shut this one down, the scouting podcast here, I wanted to ask you, man, because it's funny. I was talking to Drifter one day, and we were talking about rubs or whatever, and he just asked me. He was like, because he's like, I heard you mention a lot that you've been hunting a lot of scrapes or whatever, and I was like, yeah. He was like. He said something to the effect of like, "How's Greg feel about that?" or whatever, or something like that. He was like, because he's like, "Aren't you like isn't he like your sensei?" He was like, "Aren't you like the Litzinger protege?" He's like, "Shouldn't you be hunting rubs?"
You actually kill big deer, so
No, that's not. Yeah, that's not true. But which was kind of funny because you and I are really good friends.
Yes.
It's like I bounce a lot of stuff off of you whenever I'm seeing things. Like you're usually like one of the first guys that I text or call and say, "Hey, this is what I'm seeing. Like, what do you think?
What do you think of this?
What do you think? What do you got to say about this?" I value your opinion. So it's like, I have a couple hunting buddies like that. You, Chad, Utah. Guys that like if I'm have questions, like the first calls that I make. And he was like, I just find it interesting that he's like, that you like to hunt a lot of scrapes. He was like, and you don't talk much about rubs. He's like, but Greg, I know, is a big rub guy. And my answer was, I was like, truthfully, it's not that I'm not a believer or disbeliever in hunting them. I was like, I've only ever really had them work out for me one time where I followed a rub line back to a bed and I was able to hunt that deer in that bed, knew he was there, had him on camera, and then a family friend blew him out hunting turkeys and I never saw him again. Right. I was like, that's the only one that has ever worked out for me. So it's not a believer. Like today, and maybe part of it too is like I never found enough consistent rub sign that was meaningful enough to
even in Iowa, you didn't see rubs like that.
No, I did, but I was seeing scrapes at the same time. Like they were all kind of like part and parcel together. And so it's like I was prioritizing scrapes because deer were hitting scrapes, at that time of year. And I was like, a rub, the holy grail for me was like whenever I was always finding rubs with scrapes, and that was what I was hunting. So it was almost like a two to a degree. But like today was more of a believer because we really only found like 2 scrapes, like all day. And the one was like money. Like I'll definitely hunt that. It's on that 7-way rub.
Yeah, and that makes me think is maybe that's more bucks than actually does that are bedding in that clear cut.
Right.
Because usually scrapes equal doe activity, a lot
Right.
more does.
Right.
It's like, hey, things are coming through here, but not necessarily. It's one of those things you have to hunt to figure out. I mean, I got spots in the salt marsh, over scrapes, no does hit the scrape.
Right.
I had, I don't know, maybe a dozen bucks this year alone hit it.
Well, especially that one that you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no does, which is the first time I've ever put a camera over a scrape and never got does hitting it. So it's pretty much a buck only scrape. It was like bucks was like, hey, I'm coming through here. I'm leaving my mark and moving. Not one doe, which was just strange to me because I've never had that.
Right.
And I've had rubs, same with cameras or rubs, and I had one buck rub it, and then every doe in the county smell that tree. And so it's like, it's one of those things you don't really know until you're actually in there, what time of year and what's actually happening. But rubs bucks.
Right. Yeah.
Does aren't making rubs.
Right. Right.
I'm gonna take my hoof. And,
Right. Well, maybe they're woke.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So I wanted to ask you. The point of me bringing that up was, how, because I'm trying to figure out how to say this. So my goal now kind of really is, I'm trying to become. I think we all are, at different stages of this as well. Trying to become a more well-rounded hunter to where I can use all things to my advantage, right? So part of that is like this year trying to hunt from the ground more when it requires it and being confident in those ground setups. And today some of those places that we came through, it's like it's going to be a ground setup or nothing. You know what I mean?
Rambo style.
Straight up Rambo exploding arrows. And then part of it too is like, this past year, like you and I've talked about, it was a watershed moment for me being able to like be confident in the sign that I'm reading and make choices and make the right decisions, like to put myself on deer and stuff like that. And scrapes for me were a little easier to do that. I shouldn't say easier. I was just more comfortable doing it with those. And so one of the things I want to get better at is trusting myself and looking at rubs and being able to, for those, bits of sign to start to help tell me what I need to know and lead me in the right direction. So, we don't have to get into it super deep, but I just want to get a sense from you, man, because I don't know that I've ever asked you this point blank, but like, how do you interpret rubs and how do you decide, one, if you're going to hunt them, right? If it's huntable and, how do you look at them to tell, like, is it, what direction they're traveling from? Is this like a preseason rub, like where they're shedding velvet? Is this like a rut rub? Tell me a little bit about how you are able to break down rubs and use them.
Oh, like I said, usually rubs I used, they're just travel corridors. Basically, a rub line, a cluster of rubs is like a hanging point, or a rub line is a travel corridor. Like where we had that rub line today. Mm-hmm. They are definitely traveling there. That might require some effort, because we didn't find the destination, like why they're rubbing there. Right. Odds are it's for does, but it could be early season.
Because we didn't see shit for food anywhere.
Yeah,
other than some oaks.
Yeah, and this time of year, I mean, all that clear cut's gonna be all browse. Come hunting season, there's food all over the place. Yeah. So they might not ever leave that clear cut. That's just their travel route, and a lot of bucks come through there, and they're all marking their turf. Could be year and a half, 2.5. There's definitely a few bigger bucks in that area. Yep. But rubs are difficult. I think people put too much faith in rubs in general. Like you need to know the why. Why that rub is there. Where it's headed, and why they're rubbing the specific location. Mm-hmm. Today they were pretty much paralleling the mature hardwoods inside the clear cut. So it's pretty much like a parallel trail in farm country. Right. So it's a travel corridor. Yeah. Well, you can probably sit it during the rut and get a lot of movement. You might sit it early season.
Get nothing.
Exactly. Or you might get a lot of movement early season because there's going to be little berries in there, blackberries that deer are going to be eating.
Yeah, and if I were going to do that during early season, it's like we said earlier, it's like I would prioritize where those oaks were at, where they were dropping, and that would be, I would literally set up with an ability to shoot to one of those.
Exactly. And like I said, rubs, they're the most fascinating piece of deer sign you'll run across, because we've seen rubs from 50 yards away, and everyone's like, "Ooh, rubs!" There's a mystique to them. There's this because it's like, holy shit, it's in your face. Look at that big ass tree rub that's destroyed. Right. But you need to know why it's there, and that's hard to figure out on a whim, so to speak. Like you could walk that piece, all season long and hunt it, and still not know why those rubs were there or when they were made. Now trail cameras make that a lot easier. Right. Back in the day, I would sit a rub cluster of rubs or a rub line 3, 4, 5, 6 times, or 4 years and never see anything, because I was literally just in the middle of that rub line, and not at the destination, like the end points or the beginning points. Right. So that piece, clear cut, and all that, they're going to be in there. Does are going to be in there. Clear cut, they're going to be bedded in there. Yep. Have that many rubs, I would throw a sit in early season. There's just too many rubs not to. I mean,
it'd be one thing if it was like they were all one direction, right? You would say, okay, they're traveling this one direction. Best case scenario is like to come in during the rut while they are moving, and I'll likely see something, right? Mm-hmm. But the fact that it's going both ways, and not just like, and it's not like rubs were like 50 yards apart. Like we're talking like
every tree.
Yeah, like
literally, it's almost like a staging area before they come out of it. Like they might be bedded in that. That could be 1 or 2 bucks, bedded in there, in their preseason, and when they start shedding velvet, like that's their little, that's where they're staging up.
Right.
Or so many does are coming up and they're staging up there in the morning.
Right.
Could be a lot of variables in play, and until you actually hunt it, it's all speculation. You take an educated guess,
Right.
It's not even really educated. It's a guess,
Right.
and throw a camera on it, throw some sits at it, and you get an idea of what's happening in that particular clear cut. But clear cut is food, cover, protection. There's water in there.
Yeah.
They don't really need to leave that
No,
for anything.
It's crazy, man.
So, I mean, they can go back and forth and stay in there, and they are completely protected. It's like the salt marsh. I was telling you with the salt marsh. Like I've watched deer get bucks, big mature bucks, get up, build around their little island, drink some brackish water, munch on some oaks, and just bed right back down till dark. And then you're like, I'm there, but they have no reason to leave there. Like they got everything they need. That's why they're bedded there.
That spot, man, because it's like that's why we kept saying it today, and people are probably tired of hearing us say it on this episode. But like, I've never seen a piece of mountain ground
tore up like that,
or hunt so many different ways for habitat.
Yes,
you know what I mean. Like, there's literally everything. Like in that, because I mean, it wasn't like the swath we walked was like 2 miles.
Yes,
it was like. It might have been 300 yards, 400 yards.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was literally, we had everything from like clear cut to swamp to freaking, briery multiflora.
And those almost
roads.
like the two aged clear cuts in there as well, because those some of that stuff we could hardly even walk through.
Yep.
And other stuff was really browsy.
Yep.
And then stuff that was a little bit thicker. So,
But I mean, just goes to prove it's like if you're looking for deer, if you go somewhere and you're scouting like this piece like we were today, and that we've neither of us had ever been in that general area, right? It's like if you want to try to find something that's good and you're maybe not seeing sign right to tell you where to go, like look for diversity of habitat.
Yes, exactly.
Go where multiple things are kind of converging together.
Transition. I mean, there was 3 transitions in a.
Well, we walked through one area. You were like, "Here's a transition." Like, here's a transition.
Yeah.
Here's a transition, and it was like literally within like 20 yards.
Yeah, and that there's cattails in some of them spots.
That was the craziest part. Dude. I've never seen that.
It was
before.
like swampy, but also high ground. Because I was noticing, I'm like, where's these cattail reeds coming from? So the bucks are definitely pulling the reeds out, because I'm used to that from hunting salt marsh. And I'm like,
that was an interesting like little moment for me when you said that, because when you said like there's cattails all the way over here, and I first stopped and thought like, what the hell is he talking about? And then I was like, oh. It gets caught in their antlers, and they drag it over here until it falls out. And I was like, okay, makes sense. And that's not necessarily going to be like a forkhorn. Yeah,
exactly.
Like pulling those things through.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But like I said, to get back to the rub things, it's a lot of, just years of doing it wrong. You get a sense, you get a vibe for it. That gut instinct. And I have no problem throwing a sit, wasting, 3 or 4 sits in an area with a lot of rubs. And it gives you a good idea what's happening, and now today you got cameras, which makes the learning curve a lot shorter.
Especially cell cameras. Man. Yeah. It's like,
or just cameras in general. You put it up there in, mid-September and you pull it in November, you're pretty much going to have enough intel. And all those those rubs of old ones, new ones, what you get one year is probably consistent with prior years.
Especially when you walk into a place that has like as much historical rub sign as we had in those areas today. It wasn't like this was like a new jam.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It was like it was rubbed year over year over year. So
and you see some of the trees that were hit, probably 5 years ago. So that clear cut's got to be at least 10 years old.
Yeah, exactly. So. Well, cool, man. I think for the Scout podcast, I think we're good. But before I get you out of here, let people know where they can find out more about you, where they can follow you, and watch what you got going on.
It's a white Ford pickup truck. It has a cat.
License plate number.
License plate.
Sounds like we just like identified a peeping Tom or something.
OJ, white Bronco.
Yeah, exactly.
This Instagram, YouTube, Bowhunting Fiend. Same as always. I'd like to have more stuff, but dad life's rough life.
Dad life, yeah, for sure. All right, folks. Thanks for listening. Get at Greg on all his platforms. Talk to you soon. All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. And if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We'd be super appreciative if you'd be able to do those two things for us. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Skull Brew Coffee Company, Gumleaf USA Boots, and Day 6 Specialized Gear. And until next time, we'll see y'all.